Hey everyone. So we decided to do another video because we're bored and it's Friday night and we don't have anything better to do.
Yeah, gee, thanks for giving me all the information about our sad lives.
Alright, so first the disclaimer. Tonight we're going to talk about a pretty awesome topic. We're going to talk about the origins of life. But realize that we have made no extra preparations for this, so like we're totally going off of what we know already, which is, I would say, quite a bit, as we're both scientists. But you know,
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think science
the
is the
disclaimer
only...
is that some of this might just be bullshit, but I think it might end up being a fun video.
Zedya, you have just gained the audience's trust by exposing yourself.
Disclaimers. I love disclaimers. I have a disclaimer for everything in life. But yeah, let's go. Background.
Anyway, so I was talking to this friend of mine, and he's a religious person, but he's a reasonable person as well. And okay, come on. Can we?
I'm just saying, you're gonna get some reactions too for it.
I know. Our audience base largely
Yeah.
relate to the scientific
We cater more
truth.
to atheists. But go on.
Anyways, so the question at hand is, so several different hypotheses, scientific hypotheses points, okay, let's say a biological hypothesis point towards the origin of life, towards the self-catalysis
I should probably listen
theory.
to you.
Okay.
No, go on.
So the idea is, in the beginning, there were these primordial compounds that came together to form the RNAs that can catalyze themselves, such as ribozymes, and they formed...
replicators, the first replicators.
Right, exactly. And there's been several experiments that prove that compounds can actually come together to form amino acids of a racemic mixture. So what we basically mean by a racemic mixture is that, if you know a little bit of chemistry, is that amino acids can be both left-handed or the right-handed, and it's the perfect mixture of these amino acids that actually allow us to function completely. As for example, how do you say it? L-glutamic acid is not the same as D-glutamic acid. So an organism which... Okay, anyways, moving beyond that.
What are you doing to these poor people? Seriously.
Alright, I'm not going to give you a chemistry class because I almost failed a chemistry class myself, but anyways... So the question, the actual question is that what is the probability that self-catalyzing ribosomes, actually RNA would arise out of all those compounds? I mean, what in a controlled environment, scientists try to replicate what the Earth would be like, or was like at billions of years ago, and what conditions could have resulted in such compounds coming forth, and
could it have happened? It was, I think, the question from your friend. Could it have happened? And we should say high stakes video today, because his friend said that the answer to this question will determine whether he will believe in God or not. So he's looking at the crux of evolution, the beginning of life.
Exactly.
And he asked the DeepWaterFish whether it was probable or not.
Right.
And
so
it sort of is.
So do you wanna... Actually, I think there are several points that we can address here. First of all, I would like to borrow Zedya's expertise on this.
What expertise? I have no expertise.
Your expertise in physics, or your background in physics.
Okay.
So explain to us a little bit about entropy and life. And,
oh Jesus! What?
Okay, you can't call Jesus in this.
That's
I mean,
true. Plus, I'm not even. I wasn't even born as a Christian, but I've picked it up for some reason. Anyways, I dig Jesus. I don't know about the details of whether I don't know anything specific about RNA, but alright, so first of all, the first things that we do know is that it has been shown that in the initial conditions of Earth before life, there was just primordial junk that could have been was in fact catalyzed into forming organic compounds. This is known. not only that, throughout space there have been we have found the traces of organic compounds. So it's not like forming organic compounds isn't that hard a thing, you know. Like one of the first things they show in Carl Sagan's
Cosmos.
either the first episode or the second episode, they talk about this where they describe an experiment where they put pretty much like goop inside a huge test tube, and then they zap it, and once they zap it, it turns into organic compounds or something like that. I don't remember. It's been a while, but once you have organic compounds, right, it's not that hard for them to combine themselves into self-replicating molecules. The thing is, scientists are not sure if RNA is not necessarily the first self-replicating molecule. We don't know. We can't recreate those situations, but self-replicating molecules do emerge naturally.
Okay, so would you say that energy has a role in it? Like if there is a
of course. I mean, here's what I think people miss when they're thinking about these things. You have to understand that the Earth is a planet that is constantly receiving energy from the sun, right?
Okay.
So as long as energy is being dumped into the atmosphere of a planet like the Earth, given its temperature range, things are gonna happen. Cool things are gonna happen, which they have.
To put it in a more how do you say, academic rhetoric, what that is.
Oh yeah. Give it a try, please. Please go for it.
What she just basically
I want to see this.
what she just basically explained was a bunch of different theories which has been put forward. So first, the primordial soup theory. So basically, what happened is you have all these small molecules that are going around together, and suddenly there is this like changes in energy that basically resulted in bigger compounds. It is not exactly identical to evolution, where larger organisms came from smaller ones. It is similar to that in concept that. Let me give you an example. Is that in an experiment, glyceraldehydes, which are like 3 carbon compounds, very commonly found, could be driven to the point of forming high amounts of cytosine and uracil, which are very big components of RNA. And that brings forward the hypothesis of the RNA world hypothesis, and that's just one of the hypotheses. But the thing to consider here is the process of coming together, what you just mentioned, like how single molecules in the goop came together to make bigger compounds. That essentially points to the theory of self-organization. Now, self-organization doesn't necessarily mean that actually it does mean compounds hanging out together and coming together to form big ones. Now, a very good example of this is oil droplets in water. So when you put drops of oil in water, you'll see that they're floating, but because of their hydrophobic nature, they'll actually come together to form a bigger circle of water. I mean, bigger drop of oil in that water. And to put that into context in the biological sense is your cell membrane. Basically, your cell membrane are oil droplets which come together. And this network of self-organizing molecules from this thing called the autocatalytic chemical networks, which basically are compounds that catalyze or metabolize themselves to produce these other compounds. So basically, it's not like there's no like direction towards where these compounds are going. They're just like a bunch of mix of compounds, and whichever ones have like the most most comfortable energy conformation would continue existing, whereas the other ones which are unstable, aka have do not fit in the high energy conformations, will not high energy, in the comfortable energy conformation zone, will actually disintegrate. And that's exactly, I don't want to be assertive here, but that's a process through which we think that life came to be.
How long do you think it will take us to read 2 pages from this book? Let's try it.
It will take, well, I don't know, is there like
after what you just said, shut up. Okay, so this is the second chapter from The Selfish Gene by Richard Dawkins. The name of the chapter is The Replicators. I think this should answer your friend's question.
Okay.
In the beginning was simplicity. It is difficult enough explaining how even a simple universe began. I take it as agreed that it would be even harder to explain the sudden springing up, fully armed of complex order, life, or a being capable of creating life. Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection is satisfying because it shows us a way in which simplicity could change into complexity, how unordered atoms could group themselves into ever more complex patterns until they ended up manufacturing people. Darwin provides a solution, the only feasible one so far suggested, to the deep problem of our existence. I will try to explain the great theory in a more general way than is customary, beginning with the time before evolution itself began. Alright, here's where he gets into the replicator stuff. Darwin's survival of the fittest is really a special case of a more general law of survival of the stable. The universe is populated by stable things. A stable thing is a collection of atoms that is permanent enough or common enough to deserve a name. It may be a unique collection of atoms, such as the Matterhorn, that lasts long enough to be worth naming. Or it may be a class of entities, such as raindrops, that come into existence at a sufficiently high rate to deserve a collective name, even if any one of them is short-lived. The things that we see around us and which we think of as needing explanation, rocks, galaxies, ocean waves, are all, to a greater or lesser extent, stable patterns of atoms. Soap bubbles tend to be spherical because this is a stable configuration for thin films filled with gas. In a spacecraft, water is also stable in spherical globules, but on Earth, where there is gravity, the stable surface for standing water is flat and horizontal. Salt crystals tend to be cubes because this is a stable way of packing sodium and chloride ions together.
Lattices, crystal lattices.
In the Sun, the simplest atoms of all, hydrogen atoms, are fusing to form helium atoms because in the conditions that prevail there, the helium configuration is more stable. Other, even more complex atoms are being formed in stars all over the universe ever since soon after the Big Bang, which, according to the prevailing theory, initiated the universe. This is originally where the elements on our world came from. Wait. Yeah, go on.
Okay, so basically,
This isn't what I was looking for. I'll find it.
Anyways, so that
I'm prepared.
totally. This was totally on the fly, by the way. I was just going through my Facebook messages. The other question, which is of far more importance to us as human beings, is the origin of consciousness. Now that's where, like, a lot of reasonable believers come to the point that they ask, like, okay, so we get the biological primordial soup and the RNA stuff, but then how did we become conscious? Where did...
Wait, don't go there yet.
Not there?
Okay, I found it.
Okay. Alright, we'll be coming back to this.
Okay, yes. We might cut out some of this. The account of the origin of life that I shall give is necessarily speculative. By definition, nobody was around to see what happened. There are a number of rival theories, but they all have certain features in common. The simplified account I shall give is probably not too far from the truth. We do not know what chemical raw materials were abundant on Earth before the coming of life, but among the plausible possibilities are water, carbon dioxide, methane, and ammonia. All simple compounds known to be present on at least some of the other planets in our solar system. Wink, wink. Chemists have tried to imitate the chemical conditions of the young Earth. They have put these simple substances in a flask, as I said, and supplied the source of energy such as ultraviolet light or electric sparks, artificial simulation of primordial lightning. After a few weeks of this, something interesting is usually found inside the flask. A weak brown soup containing a large number of molecules more complex than the ones originally put in. In particular, amino acids have been found, the building blocks of proteins, one of the two great classes of biological molecules. Yeah, just let's rub it in with a smile. Before these experiments were done, naturally occurring amino acids would have been thought of as diagnostics of the presence of life. If they had been detected on, say, Mars, life on that planet would have seemed a near certainty. Now, however, their existence need imply only the presence of a few simple gases in the atmosphere and some volcanoes, sunlight, or tundra weather. More recently, laboratory simulations of the chemical conditions of Earth before the coming of life have yielded organic substances called purines and pyrimidines.
Yes.
These are building blocks of the genetic molecule DNA itself.
So just to clarify, purines and pyrimidines are basically the 4 bases and uracil that make up both DNA and RNA.
Yep. There's another paragraph that I'm going to skip, and then he says, at some point a particularly remarkable molecule was formed by accident. We will call it the replicator. It may not necessarily have been the biggest or the most complex molecule around, but it had the extraordinary property of being able to create copies of itself. This may seem a very unlikely sort of accident to happen. So it was. It was exceedingly improbable. In the lifetime of a man, things that are that improbable can be treated for practical purposes as impossible. That is why you will never win a big prize on the football pools. But in our human estimates of what is probable and what is not, we are not used to dealing in hundreds of millions of years. This is the important point. If you fill them pools, coupons every week for 100 million years, you would very likely win several jackpots. That's pretty much it. Yeah, that's all you need to know. That there was a replicator at some point that started replicating itself and then eventually evolved into DNA.
And the plausibility of it being the RNA is only because RNA is probably the smallest compound that we have found that can self-catalyze and give rise to more copies of itself.
Yeah.
So going back to the origin of consciousness, which is of more importance to the question of belief.
We should do an episode on belief. I have some shit to say about this.
Okay, but can we focus on this
Yeah.
now? Okay, thank you. So, so the question is God the origin?
Did God?
Did God? No, God did not. Is God the origin of consciousness? Or
That's a stupid question.
if that is true, I mean, how do you connect matter, consciousness, God?
It's all the same, I would say.
And what makes you say that?
Oh man, this is okay. First of all, here's the problem with talking about consciousness. Unless you have started practicing meditation, I cannot say that anyone can understand it. Everything you say will be just intellectual, a bunch of words. And it is not enough, especially if you're going to bring in the word God, it is not enough for us to have an intellectual debate about what consciousness is. Because consciousness is something that you can learn about only if you actually look inside yourself.
Okay.
I mean, of course, yeah, we can talk about how the brain works and the mechanics of it, yes. But that's, I don't know. It doesn't seem sufficient to me in any way. Sufficient in terms of, like, finding something meaningful. Also, a question like, is God the source of consciousness? Like, what does that even mean? What is it if there is a God? And when you say if there is a God, it is as if like God is some separate entity whose existence is separate from the physical world as we know it. So now you're saying there's some other entity that created the world, which is what God means, I guess, to most people.
Okay.
And then you're saying those consciousness come from God. If these are your axioms, of course consciousness comes from God, because everything comes from God if you're talking about an entity that created the universe.
Okay.
But, of course, God as a separate entity is a ridiculous concept, because you can always say, well, who created God? And all those questions that you used to ask when you were a little kid, and people told you to forget about asking them because, they don't make sense. It doesn't work that way until you were convinced of whatever religion you were born into. They brainwashed you. But those questions are actually very important questions, exactly because they cannot be answered.
Yeah, and that was just a very thinly disguised rant. Anyways, so we'll leave it to your interpretation.
Just if you're gonna have an intellectual debate about God or consciousness or any of these things, carry through with your logic, because people throw out sentences as if it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you say. But if you're gonna have a debate, then you're gonna go step by step and actually consider what you're saying. And people don't do that. So a question like, does consciousness come from God? Look at the question before you look for the answer. Sorry, I don't know why I'm angry. It's just I'm sick of this. I'm sick of these stupid questions about God and consciousness. I'm sick of them. Fucking sit your asses down and meditate.
Okay, alright.
So that you can find out for yourself instead of reading books and asking other people what's real and what's not.
It's not our place to preach, so, I mean, we're not...
It's not your place to preach.
Okay, it's not my place to preach, and I would...
It's not my place to preach either, but, like, come on, guys, like, read. If you're curious about these things, there are a gazillion books written about these things. It's not that hard to pick up the Bhagavad Gita or, like, pick up, I don't know, Power of Now or something. Anything that talks about consciousness or God or the selfish gene or consciousness explained, like... You can find all these answers if you really wanted to find them.
Yeah, but then why not, so if you're talking about picking up books to read, then why not any canonical text or like the holy texts?
Cause it's a tough one. They have gems in them too, I would say. I'm not completely disregarding I don't know, I mean, I take the Bhagavad Gita totally seriously, but not so much the Bible or the Quran.
Okay.
This is what I'll say. Okay. Whenever, here's my little piece of advice to the rest of the world when it comes to determining what you should believe in. Any book that gives you rules to live by, throw it out. All rules are BS.
That makes a lot of sense, I suppose.
Yeah. Don't let anyone else tell you what you can and cannot do. Think for yourself. Totally changed. Okay, we can cut all of this out. We can cut
you know what?
I
would leave that in because I think like there was a very natural flow into this conversation. And this was bound to come up at some point, right? I mean,
yeah.
Obviously, Zedya has very strong feelings about this. Although she might raise the question of what are these feelings? What are feelings? Anyways, so we'd like to hear back. No, this time seriously, guys. Like, we'd really like to hear back on your views about.
No one's gonna respond to this.
I know. I just plead and bargain. I mean, anyways.
Let's continue. Let's talk more.
Well, I mean, we're kind of like.
Okay, let's cut this one out and then talk again. Yes. Bye, guys.
All right, we'll be right back.